I'm going to get started here with our amazing AGA-centric, and I do work for AGA, so I'm going to preface that by saying I strongly encourage you to buy all of our stuff. There is a lot of other great stuff out there, and that was a great presentation covering a lot of different switchers. We don't make switchers, but I'll talk about some things like the vMix Go. I'll talk a little bit about that and some of that kind of stuff. But we're going to talk about both HD and 4K production. And my name is Eric Norrell, Product Manager with AGA Video Systems. I've been with AGA for almost 2 years now, and prior to that, this is actually I think my 6th Streaming Media West, or 5th. I had been with the company Telestream working on an application Wirecast, which he mentioned that he uses on those Paladin boxes. And I worked a long time on both with AGA hardware and Wirecast and various other applications, vMix being one that I'm going to highlight when we get a little bit further into my illustrious deck of slides here. AGA is a company we were founded in 1993 up in Grass Valley, California, which if you know where San Francisco and Lake Tahoe is, it's like 2/3 of the way to Tahoe in the mountains there. A lot of video equipment has been built there over the years. Less well known in the streaming media community, but there was a massive company, Grass Valley, in that area that is very well known in the broadcast and production, post-production worlds. We were originally founded making little tiny boxes that would convert various signal types around a switcher workflow. So we've always been involved in live production. Commonly, these are like SDI to HDMI or HDMI to SDI, DVI. There's a lot of different digital connections in our digital age, but to get whatever signal type it is into your switcher, as he was talking about, sometimes you have to do conversions and things. For the most part, most cameras are smart enough to have multiple formats available as an output, but for 22 years we've been making little converters to help with those problems. We also make Kona and I/O boards and or Thunderbolt boxes, which are ways to get video signals into, traditionally they've been like Adobe Premiere and other post-production applications, but things like Wirecast and vMix and some of these types of applications, you can do a multi-channel switch with just a laptop and like one of our little boxes, which you will see in this next amazing slide, which is that's our I/O 4K, which is pretty sexy, but it's an aluminum box. It can do 4K I/O, but it can also do multi-channel. He was talking about a little bit about how some manufacturers have gone with 4K equipment that uses 12 gig or 6 gig links. I'm not going to get into the engineering reasons and the physics behind why we, AGA, don't do a 12 gig link on the existing SDI cable. And it just doesn't meet our quality expectations for what SDI-based workflows generally use, which is being able to run 100 meters point to point and having a certain impedance and noise gain, SMPTE compliance. And we're a very SMPTE-based company in a lot of ways. But this is a great box. You can see we also do make PCIe cards, but it's a great way to turn, like a Paladin type of a system or a vMix Go type of a system. You can take a commodity PC or a Mac system like my laptop here, which I actually is a MacBook Pro, but I've installed Windows on it so I can use the multi-channel Windows streaming software, which is hilariously ironic and weird, but it's awesome. We also, this year, started making a 4K production camera, which is called the Scion, and you see on my colleague Troy's shoulder there. We just started taking orders yesterday, so if you want to spend a bunch of money, we're happy to take it. But if you do want to see the 4K camera, we have it set up in our booth if you want to get more into that. It's our first live production camera. We've been making camera recorders and various solid-state recorders used in live productions as crash recorders and other things for a long time, but this is really putting all of it into a box with a sensor and a lens mount and using a lot of our conversion and scaling technology in this wonderful camera. It can actually do up to 120 frames per second raw, which is very interesting in some different sports applications. For streaming, I would say we're going to be talking primarily using it as, you record 4K on the camera, you're probably going to be using HD in streaming or even SD, as he made an excellent point. Most stuff that people are watching, 360p, 480p, 720p is going to be good enough. Whereas at home, people demand a nice 1080p picture, or even we're starting to get to 4K with some of the Netflix stuff and some of the other avenues for distributing high bandwidth video, whereas cable is not quite ready for that yet. Moving along, we also do make a product which unfortunately we don't have at the show, but it uses some of our hardware scaling expertise to take a 4K raster size, and you can actually use, like in, if you've ever seen CSI, they're always like enhance, 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 they keep zooming into stuff. That doesn't actually exist unless you do pixel interpolation and build that image in scaling. So this is used very commonly in sports replay, but it's a really nice way at any kind of event where you just have one camera. Like if I had a whole panel here, the operator could easily have one camera filling the whole stage, but have close-up shots on everyone, because basically you can build virtual cameras from within the 4K image. I think I have an example here on the next slide, which is hopefully good enough resolution to be seen, but this was a test we did at a NASA launch. And they actually had about 10 of these virtual cameras as they're looking at different places where like a rocket's firing and they want to see a certain color, and they're recording everything from a million angles because there's a lot of money and science involved with NASA, and they need to cover their bases there and make sure all of their calculations don't end up blowing up a rocket like a private firm about 3 weeks ago. But this is a great example of using 4K today, and you're actually just taking an HD image out of that 4K raster so that you can use your traditional broadcast system and or streaming system with 720 or a 1080 signal, or even SD. But it is an arbitrary scaler, so you can zoom in as far as you possibly want, way beyond any reasonable pixelation, but sometimes for sports replays and some applications, that's fine. For broadcast pictures, usually you want it to look pretty nice. Streaming production with AGA, wonderful title for this slide, and also we've got some good material on here. Recording multicam for optimal delivery. I was talking a little bit about our solid state recorders. It's a little bit small, but you can see there are some diagrams of cameras, and they are running into our recorders and then out into like our SDI router for monitoring, and then mini converters. So all of our stuff basically is being used in streaming, whether you know it or not. With the conversion and routing. For example, our routers are integrated with the NewTek system, so if you're using a TriCaster, our routers, which are SDI-based, can be controlled directly from the TriCaster using network protocol, ironically called the Grass Valley protocol. But it's a really nice pairing, because you could say take one of our routers that has 16 inputs and 4 outputs, and if you have, say, like I have a TriCaster 460, which has 4 SDI inputs. He didn't cover that one in his presentation, but it's a great one. And I have the nice control surface and all that for it, but I can actually now have 16 inputs rather than just 4 with I think it's like $1,600 for our little router. So it's a nice layer of hardware to add to your existing system to really scale up and do bigger productions quickly. In fact, NewTek uses our routers in all of their demonstrations and all their trade shows. So if you ever want to see them, check out a NewTek booth. And there will be an AGA Kumo router sitting somewhere under the table or in the rack there. Zipping along to the next system, which is the one that's even more exciting than a lot of these systems where you have a switcher and then you need an encoder and you need various things. Though most of everything that he presented were great ways at various levels of production of getting things done. But one, and this is something I've been excited about for about 6 years as a proof of concept. So when Thunderbolt technology was first proposed by Apple, everyone's like, well, this has a lot of potential, but is it going to ever be used by anyone? And it was hard to tell. As Apple rolled out a lot more and added more Thunderbolt ports, and HP and Asus and a few other manufacturers have jumped on the Thunderbolt train, it really kind of unlocks some doors. And actually, we are giving away this package, not the laptop, but the hardware from us and the software from vMix. If you drop a business card by the AGA vMix booth, which is right inside the doors over there, you could win some stuff. And you could talk to me more if you want to also, but you could just win the stuff. You don't even have to talk to me. But it's an amazing way to do a 3-camera or 4-camera shoot, literally just with a laptop in a little box about this big. So like with the Paladin system, those guys make a great little box, but you still need a monitor, and you need a controller, and you need a keyboard and all this. So that's all built into a laptop, which is fantastic. vMix, great piece of software, and it can actually do 4K recording and 4K production today. So for, I think it's like $630 for the software, it can do the 4K stuff. You can do 4K streaming and production today. So People act like 4K isn't, it does require a lot of bandwidth and most people can't watch it. No one has a 4K iPhone yet. So maybe don't do it yet, but it's a good place to start, and you can actually use vMix 4K to record a 4K version of what you're doing, even though you're broadcasting in SD or HD. We're also very well known in post-production, and so the reason I mentioned that really is because, like with the vMix type of a system, oh, apparently I did an animated effect. No idea. I'm just that skilled with PowerPoint, except not at all. So I did it in Keynote and had to copy paste it all back. But post-production with AGA, if you are working in an NLE, all of our recorders and our cameras natively record in DNX or ProRes. If you've used Avid or now in the Creative Cloud from Adobe or obviously in Final Cut, ProRes works really well. And so ProRes is somewhat ubiquitous, and if you're delivering content to iTunes, you have to deliver it in ProRes. So it's a nice way to work your entire workflow if you're capturing in ProRes, editing in ProRes, and then delivering to iTunes in ProRes for streaming that way. It will improve the quality of your output product a lot because basically everything you watch on TV, whether it's Netflix or cable, has probably been transcoded somewhere between 15 and 30 times. Every time there's a little quality hit. The whole thing in compression is to make it smaller file size or require a smaller pipe, but to look just as good if possible. And so there are always going to be some loss on anything. So if you can work in the same codec and not be transcoding as much as possible, you will have a nicer output in terms of quality. That being said, most web stuff is going to be delivered at 8-bit, like Netflix, who kind of sets the precedent in delivering HD and 4K streams. It's 420. In the world of post-production, everything is being done in 12-bit. He was talking about how video rendering was happening in some of those routers at 10-bit or 12-bit. Everything's being delivered to you on Netflix at 8-bit. So, whereas traditional cable has been 10-bit. And so it's very funny in my world where I'm the crazy streaming guy. I'm like, 8-bit's fine. They're like, no, this isn't good enough. And like, look at the Netflix stock price or how many users they have. It's totally good enough. It kicks ass. So it's just kind of interesting because you do want to work on one side of the equation in a higher bit depth and with all the color you have, but once you're delivering the product, there's kind of a point of diminishing returns if you're capturing something so good and delivering it in 360p and 8-bit for phones or like in Windows Media format or some crazy thing. We also have little boxes for doing live color correction and color matching cameras, which can be extremely valuable if you're trying to match, if you're doing a multi-camera shoot and you have multiple cameras from different manufacturers. They almost never look the same, even when you hit the white balance buttons or the auto white balance buttons or try to color match them. We make a little box, we call it the LUT box, and I'm product manager of it, so if you want to talk about it more in depth, please stop by the booth. But it will actually allow you to take dual-link 3G cameras and single-link 3G cameras, apply a lookup table on those so that you can match those cameras. It's a great way to keep using your legacy cameras that may or may not plug into your mixer directly and get a good look on them. We also have a wonderful developer program, as you can see. vMix, for example, jumped on our SDK and used our retail I/O boards to build a mixer out of it. So if there are streaming or other applications out there and you would like to see a more high-quality hardware I/O options, always feel free to direct them to anyone at AJA, or our website has a developer sign-up where they could get access to our SDK. We can get out developer units, and so that your favorite software could use our hardware and all that kind of stuff too. So, for example, Wirecast, we are actually building support for Wirecast and all of our stuff, so it will be similar to vMix. It won't have quite all the functionality that vMix has, but Wirecast is a very simple and powerful application, and I especially like it because it's Mac-based, and it's really the one solution out there to do an inexpensive, widely usable encode. Whereas, like using the live stream encoders, you're a little bit more locked into the live stream ecosystem, although you can actually use it with YouTube or Ustream or some of these other big CDNs as well. This is telling me I'm at 14 minutes and 13 seconds, so I'm right on time. And I just wanted to thank everyone for staying for my wonderful speech here. And if you want to hear anything more about AJA products, we have the camera, which is now available for purchase. We have a bunch of our mini converters, scan converters, routers, everything over at our booth, as well as those vMix systems that we've been talking about, if you want to see those in action, either the laptop system or the vMix Go bigger switcher. So thanks again.